Hi, and welcome to the Selected Tech podcast, brought to you by a group of 4 MVPs doing webinars, sessions, and interviews on all things SharePoint, Office 365, and the Microsoft AI ecosystem. Their motto is learn, share, reuse. And here they are, Albert Jan, Rick, Stefan, and Tommy.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Selected Tech. This time Appie is going to let us know how he set up his new developer environment. I'm very curious about this one because I have some of those magic words like Intune and Endpoint Manager and all that stuff we know nothing about. So I'm very curious. So let's see how Appie set up his new developer environment. Let's get started. And first, one question, Appie, did you get a new machine then? Did you get a new laptop?
Yeah, I actually got a new machine. I bought myself a Surface Book 3. I already had a Surface Book 2, but I thought it made sense to upgrade. Now, I think I did a blog like 2 years ago on, okay, what am I using, like Visual Studio Code and plugins and NVM and all those fancy things. And I was still pretty happy with the results. The only downside of that is that over the course of years, you gather like a gazillion apps and tools and settings and things that you want to have on your machine. And then for me, at least, at some point, you're like, okay, I'm not going to reinstall even though the machine is slow and you know you should do a revamp of Windows like once a year or so. So I quit my job and I thought, okay, let's use some of that free time that I now have to figure out how Intune is actually working. And if I could come up with a scenario where I spend as little as time possible to set up a new machine. So this is actually using Intune, or Endpoint Manager as it is called nowadays. It's using Winget, and that is actually all the set of tools that I'm using. And those two combined can actually deploy my whole machine. So if I have a new machine, either a laptop or a Surface Go or whatever I figure out that I want to buy next, I can install it with everything I need to get up and running and start working with it right away. Now, in order to do that, you actually do need a Microsoft 365 tenant and you need a bunch of licenses. So what I did is I got an MVP license, which is E5, I think, on top of my head. The only downside is that it's not having the EMS E5 functionality. So I actually bought that because you need that if you want to use Intune. You can try a trial for 90 days if you want to see whether it's working or not. But if you have EMS E5, you have the Intune stuff. And with the Intune stuff, you can actually configure all those policies that you need to deploy everything automatically. Now, there is one thing that I haven't done yet that's still on the list. So I didn't do anything with automatic enrollment. Now, automatic enrollment is something that you can configure, and as soon as you do that, then it will automatically push all those things that you configure in Endpoint Manager. I chose to require manual enrollment. So what I need to do is, if I get a new device, I need to install Windows 10 and I need to sign in, and then I want to say, okay, enroll. The reason that I haven't automated it yet is because it was my first time. I wasn't sure what settings I was going to do. And I was like, okay, if I do it automatically and I screw up a setting, then all of a sudden I might have devices that are screwed or are having settings that I don't want. I'm not sure if you can brick a device, but I wasn't too confident yet. So I figured out, okay, I can always turn it on later. You can actually do a smaller user scope. So I'm going to create a test user or something like that. But that's you can do that. It's not required. Now, if you go to Endpoint Manager, you see that I already have 5 things in here that are healthy, so that's good. There is some things in there. But what you will do as soon as you start working with Intune or Endpoint Manager, you will actually start configuring policies, and those policies are the things that end up on your device. So whenever you start thinking about, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? Then you need to start thinking about policies. And if I start thinking about policies, there are a few things that I always think about. Okay, the first thing is the Windows 10 installation. You want to do things like maybe enable BitLocker, or maybe you want to enforce that you update weekly or update daily, or you want to have policies around scanning for viruses with Defender for Endpoint, stuff like that. So that's Windows 10. Then the second set of policies that you probably want to do are things related to Office 365. So maybe you want to push Office 365, maybe you want to push settings for OneDrive. And then finally, the last thing that you want to do additional settings or additional configuration. And I figured out that there's a lot of software that I want to use. The only weird thing there is that I didn't want to create policies for each machine that I have. And I do have like 3 machines. I have a Surface Go, I've got a desktop machine that I'm running, I'm using a laptop. And on those desktop and laptop, I want to use pretty much the same setup. But on my Surface Go, I don't want to have all the software. So I figured out that it made the most sense to work with Winget and use a bunch of scripts to install everything using Winget. So if I start with Intune or the Endpoint Manager stuff, basically what you end up with is you get a bunch of device policies. And if you go to the Windows devices, you can see here that I've got 3 devices that I'm running. And if I go to my update rings, I didn't specify anything. If I go to compliance policy, I didn't specify anything. And if I go to my configuration profiles, I actually did some configuration policies. And if you do your configuration or compliance policies, basically you get a guided tour of all the settings that you can do. And for me, just 2 configuration profiles were enough. And I used the settings template and I used the administrative template. They're actually different templates. So if you create a new profile, you can select what you want to do, and you can actually see that there is setting and templates, and the one is in preview and allows for some settings. So I'm going to cancel this and I'm going to have a look at, okay, settings catalog. What did I put in there? And you see here that what I did is I did a bunch of settings, or actually I only did 1 setting, and that setting will automatically get pushed to all my device. What did I do? I created a new setting for the news and interests. You might have seen it, but if you're installing the latest version of Windows, you get this really weird looking weather icon and news and interest icon thingy next to your clock. And I didn't want to show that. I was like, I don't want that on my environment. So as soon as you Google for it, what you can do is you can actually configure this. So if you go to your settings, you can just say, okay, I don't want to enable news and interest. Go away. I don't want to see it. And as soon as you do this, as soon as this policy gets applied to your Windows 10 machine, it will hide that ribbon or that button in the taskbar. And you can do other settings as well, right? If you look here, you can say, oh, I want to do something with BitLocker, and I can say BitLocker, and what I can say is, oh, I can either allow a warning, or I can say I always want to require device encryption. And as soon as I say this, and I enable this, what this does is it will enforce any device to apply that encryption. And I'm not going to do that right now, something that's still on the list at some point, but I've got 1 device that's not BitLocker enabled yet, so I need to get a chip for that. But as soon as that's there, you can enforce that. You can also do other things, like if you look at the connectivity options that you have, you can say, oh, I'm gonna disallow cellular data, or I'm gonna disallow or allow specific settings around that. And you can see there's this really large list of all the things that you can configure with these templates, and that you can either enable or disable and enforce on your machine. Now, I also have a administrative template, which is slightly different. And if I go there, what you can see is okay, I've got basics, and this doesn't do anything, but I also got a bunch of configuration settings. And if I go to the configuration settings, what you can do here is you can do your OneDrive settings. So you can enforce known folder move. You can enforce that you automatically get signed in. You can do files on demand. So what I did is I only enabled 6 surfaces. I did the OneDrive file on demand. I did the silently move Windows known folder, and I wanted to hide the delete files or removed everywhere reminder because I'm pretty sure that I know that that is happening and I don't really care about it. And what this does is just make sure that as soon as I log into my machine, I automatically get OneDrive with known folder moved, and it uses the silent sign-in to sign in my OneDrive app with the same credentials that I'm using to log into my Windows machine. This is actually an important one because in my OneDrive, there's a bunch of scripts that I want to run at some point when I'm installing my machine. So for Windows, there is actually only 2 settings that I need to do, 2 configuration settings that I want to run, that I want to have on my machine. And then the next step, and I can walk you through that, then you'll see that there are some other policies that I want to do because I want to have the Microsoft 365 apps for Windows 10 on my machine. That's a policy that you set on app level, and on app level you can then specify, okay, what version do you want to install? What update channel do you want to be in? Do you want to use shared computer activation or not? So this is a bunch of installation settings that you do for your Office 365 environment. And the plus side of doing this is that this will automatically sign you into Office 365 as well. So as soon as I sign into my my Windows environment, as soon as I press the enroll in MDM or enroll in the endpoint management environment, then it will pull in Office 365 for me. Then the next thing that I get is I also have Edge for Windows 10. So also making sure that I'm getting the latest version of the Edge browser, and you can do some configuration around this as well. So you can say, okay, I want to run the beta environment. That's good enough for me. You could change that if you want to the stable release, if that's what you're looking for. But you do have a bunch of settings. You can also configure your own application. So when you're adding a new application, then what you can do is you can say, I want to have Winget installed on your machine. And the cool thing about Winget is that it allows you to install applications. It's a package manager. So if I do Winget, then you can see that's installed on my machine, and that you can do installations, you can do searches, you can list. And what I can do is Winget list. You get a list of all the installed packages on my machine. It's going to take a second to load, but there you go. So basically, I installed a bunch of things with Winget and got it running on my machine. Now, in order to get Winget to your machine, there is actually a few things that you'll need to do. Now, there is this really cool blog post on how to achieve this, because this was new for me. I never done anything with creating install managers, creating packages, redistribute those packages. It's like, holy shit, what's happening? But there's this nice blog post explaining what you'll need to do. But basically, if you go through that, what you'll need to do is you'll need to create a new app. You'll need to select it as a line of business application. Then you need to upload this list of applications, and you actually can get those applications from an interesting site called store.rg AdGuard, where you can search for the Winget installer. And if you do that, then you get all those packages. You can upload that. And if you do that, you end up with an installation like this. And if I go to properties, what I can do is I can actually see what's in here, other than, okay, I've got a file, and that's the MSIX bundle. And that MSIX bundle is actually what you download here and need to upload. The interesting thing is that you need like 6 or 7 different files that the MSIX is actually dependent on, and you need to provide that as well when uploading them. But once they are there, then Winget gets automatically pushed to all the devices that you enrolled. And what I did is I created a security group, and it's called a security group called Intune. I'm the only one in there, but this way I can actually make sure that I'm always going to get the latest version. And if you go to the device installation, you can see, oh, it's installed on those different environments. And now I am ensured that Winget is on all my machines that I'm running. And that's where it gets interesting, because I'm now running on I'm running on a machine, and I install or I log in to Windows, and I'm going to wait, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, depending on your internet speed, then I get a bunch of pop-ups saying, okay, Edge is installed, Office 365 is installed, and you got the Winget package installed. That's basically all I need to do to get my cloud machine up and running. That's basically all I do to get the basics up and running. Then the next thing is, okay, once I have everything installed, then I can start working with other things. Because I'm working on a dev machine, I want to install specific things, or I want to configure specific things. And what I did is I created a folder in my OneDrive. So let me go to Documents, go to my archive, go to my dev install folder, and I just created a bunch of PowerShell scripts or a bunch of snippets that I can run. And basically what I did is I created one for every machine that I want to run, because every machine could potentially be slightly different, have a slightly different approach on what I want to install. But in general, it consists of 3 steps. So I'm going to use VS Code. Let me open that. Let me put it in presentation mode. Takes a second to load. There we go. So let's say I'm going to pack this one. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change the settings for Winget, because out of the box, Winget doesn't allow you to use the Microsoft Store. And I also want to install specific applications from the Microsoft Store. And I also potentially want to uninstall specific applications. So what I do is I get the settings path for Winget. That's this path. I'm going to override that file with my JSON configuration. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I have 3 different categories or 3 different actions that I want to do. I've got a bunch of apps that I want to install using the Winget environment. I have a bunch of Windows apps that I potentially want to install. And I've got a bunch of Windows apps that I want to uninstall, because there are actually apps on Windows 10 that I'm not going to use. I'm never going to use the Xbox app. I'm never going to use Skype or things like, let's go, advertising, Bing Weather. I don't care. So
Zoom video.
Zoom video.
Yeah, that's still part. If you install a new fresh box, you still have that as on your machine. So I was like, okay, I can remove them. So I've got 3 arrays with a bunch of stuff that I want to do. And then all I need to do is execute this. And what I do is I do winget install exec silent. So I'm not going to be bothered with any settings. And I'm going to do app, and I'm going to specify the source for winget. And then I'm going to do the winget install. Oh, there's actually a typo in here. There should be source ms store. So as soon as I do that, then it's actually installing all those things. And then finally, it's doing the uninstall. And I do a start transcript and a stop transcript to make sure that everything gets installed and I can see any errors or any logs. And as soon as I executed this script, then I'm basically done. Because if you look at all the apps that I'm installing CLI, I'm installing Elgato Stream Deck that I'm using, I'm installing PowerShell, Notepad, Storage Explorer, PowerToys, Camtasia, Git, Fork, 7-zip, Discord, basically anything I need. The only thing that I'm missing as soon as I've done this is I'm still using NVM, and NVM is not part of is not available in Winget yet. So you can't install NVM. NVM is something I need to install manually. Other than that, everything gets installed. Now, then there's another script that I run, and I didn't want to put it in the same script, but what I do is I have a specific folder structure for working with Git. So I've got my Git folder, that's where I store everything, and then I've got a subfolder for anything related to PnP, I have a subfolder for anything related to projects, and I've got a subfolder for anything related for my sandbox. And if I execute this script, I get those folders, and what I then can do, I didn't found a way to automate it, but then I can create a library, and then in my library I can see everything. So I've got a code library where all my folders are in, and that makes it a little bit easier to work with a large, complex structure. But other than that, NVM needs to be installed manually, and that's it. Because other things like your PowerShell profile or whatever you're using, those PowerShell profiles are already stored in your OneDrive because you're using non-folder move. So if I go to my my OneDrive documents folder, and if I pick documents, you see here that it already got PowerShell, and it's also already has a PowerShell profile. So things like, I don't know, what am I using in PowerShell? A set of default functions that's going to be already there. I'm using oh my posh and I think PS readline. So those modules are already going to be there because they are part of your OneDrive folder move. So it takes a little bit of time to set this up. It took me, I'm not going to admit, but it took me like 2 evenings figuring out how everything works. But once it's set up, I can now deploy a new machine in like 15 to 30 minutes and have everything installed, everything ready, everything working. And you can imagine that you could have different scripts for different devices. So on my Surface Go, I don't need CLI, I don't need my Stream Deck. I do want to use PowerShell, I do want to use Notepad, I do want to use Visual Studio Code, but that's basically it, or maybe Terminal. So you can come up with different scripts. You could potentially even make a more complex script, put everything in here and have one script, run it automatically, read the machine name, and depending on the machine name, do stuff. But for me, it just made more sense. Okay, I can do as much as possible in Intune, then I'm going to wait like 15 to 30 minutes to get everything on my machine using the Intune or Endpoint Manager. And as soon as it's there, I'm going to start that script. And you can imagine, I think this is like 12 or 15 different applications. Installing those takes another 15 minutes. So I'm going to grab an additional coffee and then you're done. You're good to go. You get your machine running and everything is working flawlessly.
Cool. And
questions?
To enroll, you didn't have to do anything. Just turn on your laptop, fresh install, and then sign in with your AD account. Nothing fancy, nothing.
No. There's one thing you need to do to enroll, and I'm going to get the user account. So if you go to your account, and if you go to Access Work or School account, if you sign in, you only get connected to this as your Active Directory. If you want to enroll, you have to click on Connect again, and that button is gone now. There is then a button saying Enroll in MDM. As soon as you flick that button saying Automatically Enroll, then it also will automatically enroll your device. But currently, I need to get a exclusion rule because I'm running a NUC, and that NUC is actually kind of a server, and I don't want to have Word and PowerPoint on my server. And if I would automatically turn it on now, then it would come in. So what I need to do is I need to make an exclusion rule for that specific device before turning it on.
And if you log in with your phone now, then it would also enroll your phone. Okay.
Yeah, you can also enroll your phone, and then if you go to your devices or if you go to apps, and if you go to apps, you can add a new app. Then now I only did Windows 10, but then you can do iOS Store app. So you could say, okay, anytime I enroll my phone, I'm going to select the App Store. I can select specific apps that I want to provide. I can select policy setting. I want to have a PIN code of at least 8 digits rather than the default 4 or 6. So you can specify all those different settings in here as well.
Cool.
Yeah, really interesting.
I have to look into that. Yeah, I have to check out your blog because you're moving too fast. I was clicking along. I was like, oh no, this template. Oh, I did this all entirely wrong.
But it's kind of the modern group policies, right? So
it kind of is the next evolution of group policies.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah,
I tried to do it, but can't get anything enrolled. I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah. I know the feeling. What I can recommend, first step is create a test user and get yourself a test device that you can deploy to see what's happening. Other than that, so I was doing this on my device and I was like, okay, there's not coming anything to my device. What I'm doing wrong? And I was like, it took me like 40 minutes to figure out, oh, it's not connected to MDM yet. I need to press the connect to MDM before I get my policies. And then as soon as you do that, then it takes like 2 minutes and it says, oh, there you go. Because there is this trick. What you can do is you can go to, as soon as you're connected, you can actually see what policies did you already get. And there is this button called, you can press sync, and then it will actually start looking actively for policies. So rather than waiting 24 hours that it could potentially take, you can always say, okay, I'm going to press sync, wait 2 or 3 minutes, and then 9 out of 10 times, I got my policies within a few minutes.
Cool.
And make sure to get a decent internet connection, because if you're pulling in Office 365 and 12 different apps on a 200 kilobit internet connection, that's going to take ages.
Not gonna work.
No.
Yeah, I can imagine that. That's not. I don't want that.
Yeah.
Interesting. I have to
Really
have
cool.
look. Yeah, I need some off time as well to figure this stuff out, because
You're almost having your holidays, right?
there's a million settings.
Yeah.
Well, my wife will like it. Yeah, it's holidays. I'm taking out my laptop and then give me a few hours. We'll see how that goes.
Cool. That was it.
Nice one.
Thanks
Nice
a
one.
lot. Cool.
Very good.
Cool,
Thanks, man.
Thanks. See you guys next time.
See you next time.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out the show notes at selectedtech.show to get all the mentioned references. And one more thing. Please tweet about the podcast and give them a 5-star review. This really helps the guys a lot. Thank you and see you next time. Bye.